Welcome back, my friends. Another episode of the Suit Kings podcast. Today, I got my co-host, Mr. Wesley Cannon, join me as per usual. However, if you're watching the video version of this today, you may notice that he doesn't look like the usual Wes.
Turn the clock back a few
Use
years.
some like cryogenic therapy or something. You're looking like 10 years younger. What happened? What's going
I
on here?
did do that. I did do that. I fully shaved my face for the first time in probably at least a year. It's not something, I mean, ever since I've been able to grow facial hair, it's not something I do frequently.
Back
But
to pubescent Wes.
yeah, but I think, yeah, it's something I'll just do every now and then and it feels kind of good. It looks kind of good or kind of weird depending on how I'm feeling.
I think it takes a minute, for you to get used
You
to it because
you
it's just so
maybe have
different.
never seen it.
Well, I remember when I was through all growing up, my dad had one of those, like those 70s, 80s thick mustaches. We call them stashes nowadays.
Yeah.
But he had just the thickest mustache, but never had any other facial hair. And then one day he just shaved it off, and he looked like a whole new person. I remember like, who are you? Just
Uh-huh.
one day he got rid of it, and I'm just like, this is not my dad. It's kind of strange. It honestly is strange.
That is strange. My dad has never fully shaven in the 30 years that I've been alive.
Yeah,
I'm
me
almost
neither.
positive on
I've
that.
never
Yeah.
shaven in the 38 years I've been. I'm just kidding.
Well, that I believe.
Yeah. So, anyways, Wes, today's gonna be a fun episode. Last week we talked about the art of trapping and um all the different things that go into a good trap. And this week we're gonna kind of follow it up with nothing related to that necessarily, but another good concept, and that's bluff catching. Something that's super
Yeah.
important.
I think it relates. I was just gonna try and relate it at least.
Let's
Maybe
hear
it
what you
would
got.
make sense, but like last week we were talking about if your opponent's betting and you have a super strong hand. This time we're gonna talk about when your opponent's betting and you have a medium strength or even kind of weak hand.
All right, so you can relate it
You can
in a
relate it a little
sense.
bit,
It works
but
a little bit, but I think bluff catching is a huge part of the game. But it's also something you got to be extremely careful with because if you're not doing it, if you're over bluff catching, you're going to be over calling and you're going to be putting too many chips over the long run. So you got to be kind of selective when you're bluff catching and not just bluff catching all the time. And that's something that I think I have tightened up over the years. From being a station to not being a station, you got to just do it correctly. So, and don't ever smirk at me like that again. What was in that?
I feel like I didn't even smirk that much there.
Oh, okay.
But
Rewind the
I like
video,
hearing
guys.
yourself call it. I do like hearing you call yourself a station because
I was prior in my past
yeah,
life.
yeah.
But yeah,
Maybe
so
sometimes against me too.
well, more so against you, just because I mean, it literally number one because I know you bluff a lot more against me, and yeah, like you
I
do.
suppose I'm a station against you.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, against each. I mean, definitely against me. We've talked about this,
yeah.
but yeah, we're gonna go
Oh,
over. We're gonna go over. Okay, hold on. We're gonna go over, bluff catching, and then all the things that you should think about when bluff catching, and all the concepts that applied, and whether it's a good time to do it or not. So, yeah, we'll go ahead and get into that. But Wes, tell me about your grind this week and how'd it go.
um, nothing to write home about. I think I lost a little bit, but
No, that's
yeah,
super exciting, dude.
yeah. No, not a lot. Yeah, really not at all. Like
I caught you off
nothing.
guard with that one. I can tell a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. Well, just because like there wasn't. Usually that's a setup to say like
Oh, I crushed
either I
it.
crushed it or I
I was
got
genuinely
crushed.
curious this time. We hadn't talked much, so
Oh yeah, no, it was kind of minorly tilting, but
okay,
um,
okay.
yeah,
Well,
nothing out of the ordinary.
okay.
What
Well,
about yours? You
I'm so glad you asked.
yeah,
Maybe that was the setup, is to have you ask me
but
all
you.
the
I
time.
mean, I know the good part of it, but it wasn't like a monumental.
Dude, it was no, it wasn't monumental. You're right. Nothing too crazy exciting. I will say that I've played 2 live tournaments so far in January, and
Mhm.
I've cashed them both on 1 bullet, which is
That's good.
astronomically unlikely. You know what I mean?
It kind of is. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was pretty hyped on. I mean, sometimes you go 20 bullets in something without cashing one time, but to cash two in a row on one bullet, I was pretty high. Both at Canterbury, um, which historically, like I don't have like an incredible track record at, but both of them were $400 buy-in birds where I ended up just min cashing both of them. Nothing too exciting. So that was that. And then on Sunday, I fired up the online streets and ended up going 0 and 10 on the day. And then last minute, I fired the 110 Sunday six, which is a 110 buy-in six max on global.
Mhm.
With like 88 players, and thankfully shipped it to save the Sunday. So that was exciting. Nothing too crazy other than that, but we've been grinding, and we got the Monster Sex series going on global. We have our meetup game coming this Tuesday, the 21st, on
Mhm.
Clubs Poker. So make sure to come and join us this week for that. That's going to be starting at 7:30 p.m. Central Time. We'll have a password to enter that, which we'll add in, all of our socials. So keep an eye on Discord, on Twitter, all that stuff. We'll post the password if you want to come with us. Not this week, but last week, we ended up failing to run that one due to a couple of different circumstances that were kind of out of our control. So this week, let's make it a bit next week, I should say. Let's make it a big one. So the 21st of January, Tuesday, the day after MLK Day. Come join us
Yeah.
7:30 p.m. Central.
Yeah, let's make that a great one.
Yeah, I
We're
want to see
still
30 plus entries, and I want to see me take home my fourth meetup game win.
You know what's funny is so what ended up happening is we needed to hit a certain amount. I think like three people need to be registered right at the beginning, and a bunch of people register or tried to register like a few minutes after it started. But me and Randy Jacks were the only two actually registered at the time, and hilariously, we were the last time we went 1-2. So I just told him like, hey, we went 1-2 again. So
You might want
you
to
know,
clarify who got one because it definitely wasn't you.
I think everyone knows that. I think anyone who's listened to any of our episodes knows that I have gotten several second places in these meetup games, and I have not gotten the first place. So
Well, there's like a saying that goes with that, like always the bridesmaid, never the bride, something like that.
okay, yeah, that's great, Max.
Always the baby, never the man. Yep.
Yeah, that's why I shaved today.
That's exactly where we're going with that. So, Wes, let's go ahead and get into the content here today. 2025. Let's become better players, and I think that a lot of our content's going to be focused on helping players become that better player that they want to be this year. And we have a lot of external stuff we're working on that, including our Patreon with a bunch of content that's going to be coming out. But what are some concepts or things to think about when preparing to bluff catch?
Yeah, so a few things that when you're facing a bet on the river and you are deciding whether you want to call or fold.
Well, let me actually pause you. Bluff catching
Yeah,
is pretty much only when someone bets the river and you're deciding to call. Is that
yeah,
correct?
yeah. I would imagine so. Because I guess if you were to say on the turn you can be bluff catching, but one thing to consider is also like how many outs you have. Like you
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
need to be right as much because you could improve on the river. So we're that is a good point. We are going to be explicitly discussing the river.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so things to consider. First off is just the price you're getting. Um, if someone bets half pot, you're getting 3-1. You only need to be right 25% of the time or more. So it, the thing to consider here is like you can I think a lot of times people sort of feel like, oh, am I good or am I not good? And if you have a very strong conviction, obviously you should go with that. But
But if the math says
if
do it,
well, the math never says what to do. The math is just kind of like if you're unsure, if you're kind of like, I might be good or I might not be, that probably means you're more like a 50-50. You
yep.
should just call then because you're always getting a price that, you know, dictates that you don't need to be right 50% of the time. You need to be
You'll need to
right.
be right 25% of the time for it to be profitable or something. Okay.
Right. Yeah. And so, yeah, you want to take the price into consideration a little bit. You want to take the story into account. Like, can you think of a lot of strong hands or strong combinations that they would play this way? Um, if their story doesn't really make sense, if you can't really think of a value hand, or at least very many value hands they would play this way, that should lean you more towards calling. But if their story really adds up, that should, if maybe lean you towards folding, or at least considering,
Okay.
okay, now would they play a lot of bluffs this way too?
Well, I think let's pause you in the line there of your list of stuff, and let's just discuss that. So, for just a very brief moment here. So, if we're at the river and what he said was, does the story make sense? It's like, okay, so now we've seen all of the action throughout the entire
Yes.
hand. Let's now rewind through the entire hand, through the board, and see if what he's representing through his betting makes sense with how the board is played out, or if it
Hmm.
makes sense. Does he have value here or does he not? And we'll give a bunch of examples through the hands that we discussed today on how we look through the hand, reset and look through, or rewind and look through the hand from the beginning all the way through the end. So, and we'll go through the concepts as we do that. So, yeah, I just kind of wanted to clarify that. Go ahead.
Yep. The third thing, and these are in no particular order, but if you have a good blocker, if you have good blockers, that can come into play as well. That shouldn't be the only reason you make a hero call by any means, though. But if you have a card that makes it a little bit less likely your opponent has value, that should be at least a little bit of the consideration.
I think all these things you're bringing up are little things that can notch you more towards calling or folding, though. Use
Yes.
to help you lean towards one direction or the other. Don't use them as the ultimatum.
Yep. Yeah, that's well said. And then fourth, can we beat a value? Like, can we beat some value bets?
Yeah.
We're talking about bluff catching, but you should think, well, if we are, is there a chance that they're going for value with a hand that we're beating? And if so, you should call against most players unless you think an opponent is just going to be drastically under bluffing you. Um, this one is only this one only comes up in tournaments, but you should consider the ICM situation. If it's a close one, but you're on the bubble, you're on the final table bubble, like you should heavily just lean towards folding, because it's not going, your upside is not as good as your downside in those spots.
Okay.
And the last one that I have is just our opponent's general tendencies. So
Very
does someone bluff? Is someone very active? Are they
yeah. If you've
capable
been
of
paying attention
bluffing?
the past hour, have they been betting a lot? Have they shown any bluffs in the past? I mean, paying attention to the opponent's tendencies is probably the most important in my opinion.
Yeah. And this will be like online, you get so many more hands than live. But yeah, live, just like you may not remember the specifics of all the hands you've played with your opponent, but people tend to pick up on the vibes of the opponent that they're playing against. And I
Yep.
think it's important to, yeah, just,
Okay.
if they're going to be bluffing a lot or a little bit or probably an appropriate amount, which to be fair, a quote unquote appropriate amount of bluffing is actually quite a lot. But yeah, just think about your opponent tendencies and factor that in as well. Max, is there anything else that came to your mind?
Yeah, there's two other things I wanted to mention quickly. One of them, well, I guess it's one thing, and that's tells. Things that you might see your opponent that might give you more
Yeah,
information.
even if it's not like a tendency, it's something they did during this hand, whether it's
Exactly.
like
Yeah. For
whether it's
example, like
physical or a bet sizing
yeah,
thing.
so for live, for example, it's like a physical motion or, and you got to be careful with this stuff too, because good players can obviously fake tells, which you don't see too often, but I'm just saying it's possible. But uh, timing is important. How fast are they betting? And what timing will do is tell you, like, well, did they, I think timing's a big one because it's like if they snap bet, it's either saying they're really strong or they're bluffing because either they're not considering what you have.
Mhm.
Do you see what I'm saying? So like if they
Yep.
snap bet, they're not
That's
considering am I beat here? What am I trying to get value against? Et cetera, et cetera. They're just betting.
it's yeah, it's like a pretty polarizing thing.
It's a polarizing thing, exactly. So I have an example of that in my hand that we'll discuss. And I think we have three hands we'll go over, and they're not, the job of this podcast isn't to just, glorify hands we played where we bluff caught successfully. We'll also go over a hand where where Wes tries to bluff catch unsuccessfully because there's none of that in my history at all. So
You've never done that, yeah.
never done it.
You know what? I don't know if we've talked about this hand on the podcast, but I might just also quickly mention that time where I called you all in with Jack High correctly in the meetup game.
It was a
That
meetup
was,
game, like
but
yeah, yeah.
it honestly, so much of it came into account. Like I snap called too.
I mean, the meetup
I
game's a
have to.
different beast. I'm just clicking away, so don't get too proud of yourself, buddy.
It's not even about that. It's just the fact that it was a meetup game was one of the fact. Like I knew your tendencies in that game would be so much different.
Very,
You know?
you know what? You're right. That's 100% correct. Like you adapted to the situation and were able to make a quick snap hero call with what was it, Jack? How you said? I
Yeah.
remember, I remember the hand. I don't remember the actual details of the hand though.
Yeah.
That's for you. Everybody who's listening knows that.
Yeah. Well, I might just sprinkle that in at the end too.
Yeah, I'm okay with it. Like, I think one of the best forms of like humor is like what's the word I'm looking?
Deprecation.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, making fun of yourself. That's where the funny is. So,
Yeah, especially for you.
I mean, yeah, facts. So, anyways, let's go ahead and get into the three hands here, Wes. Let's start with yours.
Okay. So the first hand, we're going to start with, actually, I'm not going to say whether I won or lost this hand yet. Let's start with, so I was playing in a ring game on Clubs Poker last night, and it wasn't a big pot or anything. It was a pretty small pot. So I had pocket eights in the hijack. I opened 2.5 bigs. We're playing 2-5. So I opened a 1250. The button calls and the blinds fold. So there is 6.5 blinds in the pot. The flop comes ace jack 10.
That's an absolute dream flop for
It's
you.
a dream flop for pocket eights, right?
But I mean, yeah, out of the gate, you're in position and you have range advantage. But yeah. Anyways, continue. Doesn't matter.
Yeah. Did you say in position or out of position?
So big blind called, right?
Button called. Sorry.
Oh, button called. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Ignore that then. I thought big blind just came along. Okay, continue.
All good. So we 6.5 blinds in the pot. I just decided to check. I'm not, I'm planning on check folding, but
yeah,
we could check down and yeah, our opponent could have 7s, 6s, 5s, 4s, and just check down and we win. Right?
Yeah, but there's a lot more combinations that are beating you than that aren't beating you.
Yeah, and if we bet, we're gonna get those worse hands to fold, and like we're not going to get a 10, like a queen 10 suited, or probably not even a 10-9 suited to fold with one.
Well, let me make an assumption here. Considering the fact that you said if he were to bet you would fold, I'm gonna guess it goes check check.
It goes check check on the flop. The turn is a king, so it's ace jack 10 king. So now our queen makes a straight.
Okay.
There's 4 to Broadway on the board. Same deal, goes check check.
Okay, interesting. Check check. Okay.
Yeah. So the river is a 4, and there's no flush that came in or anything at any point.
So you check. You're obviously just trying to get to showdown with your eights.
Yeah, I check. I feel like I'm giving up, and then he bets 5.2 big blinds
into what was it,
6.5. So he bets 80%, and so it started off sort of as a spidey sense thing where I'm like, what is this? And so I would say it started off as a bit of a feeling.
Can you tell me? Can you remind me the entire board or the flop? I mean,
ace jack 10,
ace jack 10. Okay,
king 4. So when he does this, I'm like, okay, what are the value bets? Because for starters, if he had had a queen, he is betting the turn pretty much always. I'm ruling out a straight. I am ruling out all sets except for pocket 4s because he would have.
Well, you know what they say about 4s.
Yeah. Well, do they river the most sets though?
I don't. Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah. He would have like 3-bet 10s, jacks, kings, aces pre-flop. He would have bet those before. I'm ruling out those sets. 2-pair, like if he had flopped 2-pair, he would have bet the flop.
He would have bet long before the river.
Yeah. The only 2-pair that might make sense would be like a
jack king.
king jack suited and king 10 suited, not
Yeah.
even offsuit, but just like
Yeah.
suited.
So hands
Because
that
then
he would, you know, check on the flop and turn with showdown value, having second or third pair, and then rivering two pair, you're saying.
turning two pair.
Or turning two pair. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, because with four to a straight, I don't necessarily think he would bet the turn. Like he's not going to go for two streets with king jack or king
Right,
10.
right. Yep.
And if he had like a weak ace, the kicker wouldn't play. I just don't think he would go for value with an ace here.
Can you explain real quick for the newer listeners on what you mean by going two streets?
Yes. So
I think this is
basically,
important too.
turn and river. By two streets, we just mean like two, pre-flop is a street, the flop is a street, turn is a street, river is a street.
And
So I
yeah,
think he would not, if he were to bet if he turned two pair with king jack or king 10, maybe he would bet, but if he did, he would check the river because any hand that I'm calling twice with is going to be one that
could
beats
potentially have a straight
those
on the
two
river.
pair.
Yeah.
There's no straight on the river. There's on the turn. I think you're getting
the turn. The river was the four. I keep mixing the turn and river up. Sorry for all the listeners. Okay, continue.
So we got. Anyway, so on the flop, we can rule out any flopped two pair, any flopped sets. We can rule out a straight completely based on how he played it. And we can rule out one pair that he's value betting. King jack suited and king 10 suited, maybe, but that's only a few combos. And then the rivered set of fours is the one that we are worried about, but there's still only three combos of pocket fours left. Whereas I could see him, my thought in the moment was he could have deuces and just kind of realize, and when I say deuce, he could have deuces, threes, fives, maybe even
and
sixes.
Realize you're on a hand that's up there under tens.
Yeah, just realize that I would have stabbed at the flop. If I had like 7-8 suited, I would have bet small on the flop just to fold out the under pairs, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So he realizes that I have likely one pair that at no point have I ever really wanted to put any money in with.
Yeah. You're just trying to get the showdown with. It makes it clear. Yep.
Yeah. And so he could have a 7-8 or 6-7 suited, 5-6 suited, that too.
Okay.
So I can see. So let's go to the list of considerations here. The price is not necessarily great, but it's a less than a pot size bet. So I need to be right less than 33%. It's like I probably need to be good about 28 to 30% of the time. So like, I already think I'm coming up with more combos of hands he might bluff with than hands he might value bet with, right?
Well, let me ask you. So essentially, there's no point. There's no way he has a straight here as played. He would have bet either the flop or turn. So essentially, the only thing he's saying that he's value betting here is pocket fours that he rivered and is targeting two pairs.
Yeah, and maybe king jack suited and king 10 suited that check back the turn because even though he had two pair on the turn, there was four to a straight, so he wasn't. Yeah. It wasn't actually that strong of a hand. So I think price is not necessarily great, but we're just I guess the story is what we're leaning into on this one, where it's like none of the value hands make sense here. And I don't think like if he had ace 7 suited, I don't think he's just value betting one pair, hoping to get called by like some random one pair.
I think when bluff catching, trying to figure out the story is the most important part. Like, does his story make sense? And if it makes sense, it's the better time to bluff, right? Because you can get it through then. But in this sense, it doesn't seem like it just doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm. And then so blockers not good. We actually have bad blockers because if we somehow had a 4, I think that would be better. But and when we have 2 8s, like maybe he could have 7-8 suited in bluff, and so blockers are either neutral or bad here. Can we beat value? Definitely not. ICM doesn't matter. Don't really have a read on opponent tendencies, and it's online, so there's not like a physical tell involved. But I think the story here is really the thing that it came down to. And I ended up making the call, and he showed 6-7 of hearts for 7 high. So,
So this would have been nice if he were to potentially This probably would have got through if he were to bet flop and bet river. So bet flop, check turn, bet river. The
Yeah.
story would make sense.
Or any two, like, well,
Any two
to be
streets.
fair, it would have gotten through if he just bet flop, but if he had bet turn as well,
Yeah. Yeah.
he could easily represent queen jack suited, queen 10 suited, um, king queen not so much because he would have flopped a straight with that. But yeah,
What
at any point I feel like he could have, before the river, had he showed aggression, it would have made the story a little bit more believable for me.
so going
Plus,
back to sorry, continue what your thought was.
the last thing I was going to say is, plus at that point, if you bet before the river, then there's sort of an implication that I could have to not just bluff catch here, but bluff catch the river as well, which makes it a much worse proposition.
Okay.
So
I just kind of wanted to clarify the points, the original 4 or 5 talking points or whatever it was you gave prior to the hand history. Well, let's go over those in this hand. So the one of them was the story. Does it make sense? No, it doesn't make sense. If it had a value hand here, we'd expect him to bet probably 2 streets worth. Does that make sense? Does that seem fair?
um, I
Or he
would
would
say
have bet
that
earlier in the hand, I guess is what I mean. Not 2 streets, but he would have bet earlier in the hand.
he would have bet earlier in the hand with some of it, or if he has, it, it's like the story makes sense only for such a small portion of hands is
Yep.
the way I would put it.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Okay.
it doesn't
That's
make
well put, yeah.
sense. It doesn't make sense for enough hands for me to think that it's likely.
And now the odds. What I forgot what you said they were, and were you getting the right price? Probably
Well,
technically not, because you said you bet 5 into 6 something.
well, I was easily getting the right price because I thought that I was, based on the combos, if I thought he
Okay.
might bluff, like, I could count out, like, if he would bluff the lowest pocket pairs plus some suited connectors, he probably had like 18 combos of bluffs, and he probably only had like 8 combos of value, which means I'm like good close to 70% of the time.
Okay.
So it would be like impossible for me to not get the right price there.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Okay. So the pricing that, was there any sort of timing tells or tells at all?
No,
No. Okay.
nothing that played into it.
Okay. Is there any other points I'm missing that we brought up?
He didn't have any. So tells and tendencies maybe go together, but he didn't have any tendencies that I knew of.
You hadn't seen him showing bluffs already.
No, but I kind of assume online that it's just, people will be able to a little more.
I feel like people bluff. Well, maybe that's inaccurate. I'll tell you what, I see a lot of bluffing live lately.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
anyways, yeah.
Yeah, that could be true. And then can we beat value? And we definitely cannot beat a value bet.
It's your hand's a pure bluff catcher.
Yeah. In this case, we cannot. So
Okay.
really it was and blockers were not good. I mean, we had bad blockers.
Yeah, and blockers as well. So essentially, this was just the story didn't make sense. And that's kind of, yeah.
Yeah. And this is a good example of more of how I think about the game, where I don't know that like a solver would do this, but I do know that based on how I perceive people to play in general, and maybe not even this player specifically, but just from just a logical standpoint, there were more combinations of bluffs that I could think of than logical value bets. And if you're making a bet, you want there to be more value bets than bluffs.
Okay.
Because for the price he gave me, I needed to win like 30% of the time when I called. And I came to the conclusion, not that I was getting to this exact number in the moment, but based on how I'm looking at all the combos now, I'm like, I was probably good like 65, 70% of the time.
Yeah,
So,
I think that intuitively you're able to kind of, without doing the combos in your head, you're able to realize that.
yes. Yeah. If you practice it off the table, it just sort of makes more sense on the table.
Yeah. Or even practice it on the table. I mean, just from experience, all the experience you've developed over the years, it's something that intuitively, and I think maybe that's something that you'll see more so in mine. So a lot of you listeners know that Wes is more of a theoretically driven player, where I'm more of the field player. Obviously, I have a large foundation of theory through studying with Wes and through other platforms. But anything on that hand you wanted to complete before we go into my hand?
No, should we do your hand or my other hand first?
Um, let's go ahead and let's do mine, and then we'll bounce back to yours.
Sounds good.
Okay. So let's go ahead and actually just take a quick break.
Okay.
Okay, so we're back. Nice, easy, quick break there. Second hand is going to be a hand I played at Firekeeper's MSPT. The blinds. So first off, if you're not familiar with Firekeeper's MSPT, this is like the cream of the crop. It's like the best 1100 in the Midwest. It's got, what is it, a 2 million guarantee on it?
Whatever I think it
Or
might
1
only be
mil. It's
one,
a,
but the actual prize pool has been well over 2 million.
yeah. So it almost doubles its guarantee. It's a massive $1,100 event. It's in Michigan.
Battle Creek, Michigan.
Battle Creek, Michigan. They do it twice a year. Wes and I often travel to that. And this was from the last one in September. Was that right, Wes?
October, yeah. But
October.
This last fall, yeah.
I just talked about this. I still can't even remember. Yeah, it was last fall. Anyways, MSPT Firekeepers. The blinds are 400, 800, 800. I've been playing at my table now for about an hour, so I've seen some tendencies for. I mean, I'm very much paying attention to the tendencies of my opponents and how the action's getting driven for that first hour, and trying to just kind of establish how the table's playing and get information based on that, so I can play my game correctly from there. And that takes into consideration in this hand here, where essentially it starts off folding to mid position, who limps. Cutoff also limps behind. Folds to me in the big blind with King Jack of Hearts. I have 50K, which is, how many bigs is that? That's like 65 bigs or something. Is that right?
Say it again.
It's 800 big blind, 50K. Is that 65 bigs, something like that?
Yeah, just about.
Yep. So, and both have me covered. So we're dang deep. Now, Mike, this isn't really on the topic of bluff catching, but I have King Jack of Hearts with two limps in middle position and late position, or a limp in middle position and late position. What do you think about just checking back the King Jack of Hearts first off?
I think I would raise it up.
Yeah,
try and take the lead, and like if it was King Jack offsuit, I would check.
I'll tell you,
this is the sort of spot where it's like it's such a untheoretically. I don't know. I would raise with.
I will explain why I ended up limping. So, and I remember this pretty clearly
because it's a lot of money.
Because I'm a nit. It's a big. That's because I'm a nit. No. One thing I want to mention is, again, this plays back into me paying attention over the past hour I've been playing with my opponents. They've been limping a ton, and they've been calling whatever size is raised is behind them. So the reason why I'm checking back King Jack of Hearts here is because even if I go 6x, they're both going to call, and now I'm playing a bloated out of position against two other opponents.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So that's specifically the reason I didn't. I still don't hate raising. I still don't hate it by any means. But in this case, I decided to go with just check back. So I check back. Flop comes ace 10-3 with two clubs.
Dream flop.
We got a gutter to the nutter, baby. We got a gutter to the nutter. I think we're always just checking here.
Yep. Yeah, just hoping to hit the queen.
So I check, mid position checks, and now cutoff. So pot's 4,200. Cutoff bet's 2,200. So just over half pot, essentially half pot.
Yep.
And with the gutter to the nutter, we're going to call here. We're still super deep. We have implied value if we catch our gutter, etc. And also, King High can just sometimes be good here against a limping range. Like, who knows what this dude has? Just limp and then betting in position. Like, sometimes King High can just be good here. Those are my thoughts.
It feels like it would be rare, but you are right. People don't necessarily think about betting in those multi-way spots how they should. Like King High could be good.
I will say that I've been paying very much attention to these opponents, specifically the guy that's betting here in position, and he seems kind of spewy. He's been limping and then just betting in position a lot. He's shown multiple bluffs so far.
Do you ever consider a check raise here?
Maybe not a bad spot. I thought because I had some showdown value that I would just check call. But I like check raising because I win the pot there and then I don't have to play the rest of the pot out of position.
Yeah, it's tricky though. I mean, because it's also like he could have clubs where he can easily call, and
Yeah,
then
and just
then you
because I've
can't.
seen him bluffing doesn't mean he's bluffing here, right? Like sometimes they have it. So anyways, I was just gonna try and realize equity and then probably just fold a lot of turns if he blasts again, honestly.
Mhm.
So we'll continue here. The pot, so mid position folds, we're heads up. The pot is 8,600. Now, just a reminder, the flop is ace 10-3 with two clubs. I have king jack of hearts, and I'm in the big blind. So we still got the gutter to the nutter. The turn is a five of spades. It does not bring in a second flush draw.
Boom. Oh
Yes,
wait, no, you
boom.
missed.
Oh, such a massive turn. I check, and my opponent checks back. So
Makes
at this
sense.
point, now I'm thinking my opponent could have something like some 10x, some second
Mhm.
pairs that he was betting on flop and now just trying to get to showdown with. So there's some hands. Um, I mean, he could even just have pocket sixes or something
Eights or
that
something.
yeah, just
Yeah.
something that he limped, right? Some sort of smaller pocket pair. Um, so again, turn is five of spades. It goes check, check. Now the river is the six of spades. So the full board is ace 10-3, five of spades, six of spades. No flush comes in.
Yeah.
We check again because at this point I'm like, you know what, king high again can still have showdown value. We can just be beating some just pure air hands.
And you kind of don't even expect him to fold a 10 or something because the clubs miss.
I
Like,
definitely do not expect if I were to bluff here to get him to fold any sort of pair.
yeah.
I did not think he was going to fold, so I'm not going to bluff here. And I just take my very small sliver of showdown value to to hopefully get the
So
showdown.
people must be saying, well, I thought we were talking about bluff catching. Max can't bluff catch this hand.
Oh wait, this is the bluff catching episode. Shh, what am I doing?
Yeah. No, that's
um,
okay. You can do a different hand.
Oh wait,
Oh
this
wait.
that's right. That's right. This is a bluff catching hand. My bad. Let's go back to the river action. So, um I check and my opponent snap bets. He snap bets 7K and 8,600. Um this is probably the most important part of the hand to to gain information from. Um when he bets snap bets, uh it makes me think that he's not considering what my hand is. That like if he were to have value, he's just saying either he has a hand so strong that he's not worried that if he's beat it all, so he's just going to call, or he's just bluffing
He's
because you know what I'm saying. Like that's the two options I see when I see snap bets.
Yeah. So you kind of deduce that like this is either two pair plus or a bluff.
Exa-
And
yeah,
if it's two pair plus, it's because he hit it on the river
exactly. Because if he
because
had
he
two
didn't bet the
pairs with the
turn.
turn, he wouldn't have checked it back. So
So
now
that
we're
already just narrows the combos so much to like pocket sixes, ace six, five, six suited, maybe like,
exactly, and like you said, in the moment, I wasn't necessarily counting all the combos. I was just intuitively knowing through all of my experience in playing poker that there's so many of these hands that he just doesn't have now by betting this size on the river. So essentially what he's saying is that he has like ace five, I guess, which or excuse me, ace six, which he like limped and then rivered two, he bet a shitty ace on the flop, and then rivered two, right? So that hand makes sense. And then pocket sixes make sense, I guess. Is there any
yep,
hands I'm thinking other hands besides those that
five,
are
six
valid?
suited, 10, six suited. I don't know. You
Yeah, I
never
mean he could
really
have like
know.
five, six of clubs, maybe.
We're just an airball. Like, I don't know if his bluffs, it sounds like from how you describe him, if he's bluffing on the flop, it doesn't even need to be with a bunch of equity or something.
Okay.
It can
Okay.
just sort of be an airball.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I mean, I see where you're going with this already.
Yeah, again, but going back to the points you made, earlier in this episode, the story to me did not make much sense.
His story very much narrows the range of hands that he can have for value.
Exactly.
And
Yep.
you perceive him as someone who maybe is an over bluffer, if anything.
So, what are my odds needing to be for it to be a profitable call if there's eight? So, seven, so it'd be, what is that? 8 to 7, 14, 15.6K in the pot, and it's 7K to call.
It's
So, I have to be right.
a little better than 2 to 1. So
Yeah, a
it's
little better
under
than 50.
33%. It's similar to mine where it's like
Exactly. Now,
30-ish,
yeah, and
28%-ish.
now if I'm making his value range so small and his bluffing range just much wider, it's again, I think it makes it kind of a slam dunk call. Maybe not a slam dunk, but it
Yeah,
makes it a good call.
yeah. But when you talk about it that way logically, like, yes, I certainly don't. Again, I think both of our hands are good examples of we don't have good blockers. We don't have we barely even have showdown value.
I didn't even,
Uh,
yeah. Until he
yeah,
bet the river, I didn't think I had showdown. Until he snap bet the river, I didn't think I had much showdown value. But the way he played the river, all of a sudden my hand felt like I had a ton of showdown value.
right.
It's kind of
Yeah,
weird, right? It's so strange, and that's one of the beauties of poker is just how intricate the game can be based on the actions your opponents and you take, like,
yeah.
and how it can
It's
just
too
change on
bad.
the whim.
It's too bad he can't like because it's funny because if he checked the river, you would probably think you're beat, but
Exactly,
he
because
can't
you
win
check
that
with
way.
showdown value, right?
Yeah, but he
Exactly.
could trick you, but you'd still win because he didn't get you to
Yeah,
fold.
and
So.
another point I want to make is like if he was just c betting a 10 on the, I mean he definitely doesn't have 10-5 or 10-6, so he didn't make those two pairs. Maybe he suited a version of 10-6 or something. Who knows? But if he was, just value betting a jack on the flop, he would never bet 7K on the river. If he just had a naked ace, just a top pair with any kicker, he would not bet that size on the river. And then I'm also removing ace king, ace queen, ace jack, and probably even ace 10 out of his range. Well, yeah, I'm definitely removing ace 10 out of his range as played, but I'm moving all those hands out of his range because he didn't raise pre.
Hmm.
So now it's just like I'm continuously taking all this information and boiling his range into what I think it is, what I'm perceiving it to
Yeah,
be. So
yeah. Well, and you know, this is. I know we talk about feel versus theory, but like this is more how I think about a hand. It's not necessarily like specifically the theory. It's using sort of the theory concepts to apply it to an exploitative situation,
and that's
right?
kind of I feel like that's a foundation
And
of my
that's
play.
yeah, and that's exactly what you're doing. Have you said what he had?
I have not said what he has
Because
yet.
you called
So
with king high.
I relatively quickly called. I just because like intuitively, like the second he snap bet that size, almost a full pot bet on that river, I was just like, what are you doing? Like it was so funny. I remember in my head, I'm like, wow, okay, well, here, call. Like there was not much, like I didn't tank for a minute even. I think it was probably like a 20-second tank, and I was just like, this is silly. I call. Um,
Mhm.
and then he sheepishly turns over the queen nine offsuit. So he just had air the entire time. There was
Yeah, yeah. No, I think that's a terrific read. It actually does remind me of one more thing you need to think about though when bluff catching. And obviously it didn't turn out to be the case here, but one thing you should make sure of is make sure you can beat all the bluffs because that's honestly the thing that would worry me most here is like
that's important.
he turns over king queen or turns over like uh, what was the board
King
ace
Queen's a good
10
one that he might just have here.
ace 10 3 5 6, right?
Honestly, I think he might even open King Queen pre, but continue.
Or if he has like deuces or
Yeah,
something
yeah.
that he's
See, and
turning
and
into a bluff.
that's what sucks is I could have value owned my or maybe value owned isn't the right description for this, but yes, I could have easily been beat by some shitty pair that he turned into a bluff. And there's been so many times in my career as a poker player where I've bluff catched correctly, but incorrectly because he was bluffing with a better hand.
I've done even recently. I remember a time I did that. We won't get into it now, but it's definitely that I would say that is something to add to our list of things. Is make sure you can actually even beat all the bluffs here, right?
Great point
So
to add. And that was something I didn't even think about while we were
or
discussing
I
this
should
because that's a
yeah,
huge issue.
or I should say you were so sure that that there were so many more bluffs than value that maybe it didn't even maybe the fact that you could occasionally lose to a bluff still means it was a good call.
Yeah.
Like
I
there
think
weren't
that's
enough.
also part of it. So,
Yeah, but no, that was a really cool one.
and one thing I want to mention I thought was really funny about this hand is that, so I obviously, called with king high in this pot and the whole table, was like gasping, like, what the fuck? Like, wow,
Yeah.
that was sick. Well, what was super funny about this was that about an orbit earlier, I folded the second nut flush incorrectly to this old guy who jammed the river.
Oh
It was on a
no.
four flush, just to kind of
Yeah.
grant. Just it was on a
Yeah.
four
Yeah.
flush. I folded the second nut flush to a guy who jammed the river and withered, who I thought was never bluffing, and
Yeah.
I show the second nut flush and fold, and then he shows me the fourth nut flush
Oh,
and
weird.
wins the pot. I know I couldn't
Yeah.
believe he jammed with it. I was just like I never saw him doing that. but my opponent saw me fold that hand face up.
Oh,
And then
so
and then they see me call
call
with
with king
king high
high.
on this pot. And they're like, what the fuck is going on?
Well, it just goes to show like your absolute hand strength in poker is so much less important than the relative hand strength and the situational hand strength.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And each hand is different. So like follow the logic and go from there. Like in my opinion on that flush hand, the logic was that I was beat. So I folded. In this hand, even though I only compared second nut flush versus king high, I felt like the opposite with my king high. So, I mean, and just follow the logic.
yeah. And we won't get into that hand now. But I remember you told me that flush hand, and I kind of agreed with you on that one too.
I couldn't believe. I mean,
Yeah.
I was like, you know what? And it was a big pot, and I made an incorrect fold, but honestly, I think I would do it again.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah. So sometimes
Um,
you're wrong in poker, and if you're not sometimes wrong, you're not playing correctly.
totally. Or you're probably cheating, actually.
Oh yeah, yeah, or you're cheating. So that was a fun
So,
hand. Thanks for listening to that one, Wes. Now you have a third one, and then we have a very brief fourth one where you can make fun of me.
yeah. So the third one here, we actually reviewed it together yesterday, but this is an online $500 tournament. Kind of early mid stages. We have a bunch of chips. We limp in the small blind with king 10 offsuit. We have the 10 of diamonds, which will matter a little bit. Big blind checks. Flop is king 7-3 with the king and 7 of diamonds. We won't play out the hand too much in terms of strategy, but we check, face a bet of one big blind, we call. Turn is a
Remind me,
10.
sorry, I was lost in thought there for a moment. So we had king 10 in the small. It's that hand, right?
Yep.
Okay. And then you already spoke the action up to that point.
Yep. So then we check call the flop. Pot is like 4.8 big blinds now
What was
going
the
to the
flop,
turn.
full flop again? King.
King 7-3, 2 diamonds.
Okay.
Turn is a 10, so we have top 2 pair. 10 of spades. Doesn't bring
Two
in
flush
any.
draws?
No, just one.
Okay. Just one.
We check and face a near pot size bet, and we're about 40 blinds deep. So when you and I reviewed this, we kind of prefer to raise here. But
Yeah.
anyways, I ended up calling. Pot is somewhere around 13, I think 13.6 bigs. The river is a
Like
3
four
of
diamonds.
diamonds. So it
Three
pairs the
diamonds. Yeah.
3 and brings in the flush. And we check, and our opponent tanks and bets 11 bigs into 13 point something bigs.
You
And
want to
so
say the whole board?
king of diamonds, 7 of diamonds, 3 of hearts, I think.
Bananas.
10 of spades, 3 of diamonds. So we have
Okay.
top 2 pair, but the flush gets in. And if our opponent had 7-3 or 10-3, they now have a boat. So quickly here on the river, there are a few considerations. Like, is this a bluff catch or not? I don't think with the flush coming in that our opponent is going to bet, what is it, like 80% pot. We're seeing a lot of these 80-ish% pot river bets today.
Yeah. But your hand's like a pure bluff catcher here, isn't it then?
Yeah, the first question is, can we beat, or like, is he playing king 7 this way?
Yeah.
And
That's the only other two pair you're beating, right? Or
yeah,
besides 7-10.
Right, 7-10 loses to just a king now, so
Yeah.
that's
That's right, because
question.
the board paired threes. Yep.
Yeah. The diamonds get there. The main bluffs I can beat are like hands with 1 diamond. Maybe they're a gutter on the flop, or maybe they turned a straight draw. Like maybe he started firing with 8-9 offsuit with a diamond, or Jack-9 with a diamond, 8-6 with a diamond. And so we have a block, 10 of diamonds is nice because we take out some flush combos. Although I will say, and we talked about this a bit yesterday, I don't think it's as relevant of a blocker, because if he had 10x of diamonds, he might check the turn because he turns second pair.
Mm-hmm.
And so he doesn't need to bluff, and he might not think it's a strong enough hand to value bet. Maybe he would, though. But I think having the 10 of diamonds is better than having an offsuit 10. But I don't necessarily think it can go either way, because also it doesn't block any. I certainly don't block any bluffs. I have 2 pair.
Yeah.
So I would say my blockers are pretty good. I would say the price, I mean, I would say this is a situation where it's close, where I think I'm going to be beat. I need to be right again, maybe like 28 to 30% of the time. That's probably going to be close to the case. Like if I'm calling here, I'm expecting to lose over half the time for sure.
I like
Um,
I like this hand a lot, Wes, because um, this is an important one I should say to bring up. This is the reason I like it, is because your hand is so strong, yet
mhm.
it's still just a bluff catcher. And I
It
think
is
people will overlook that their hand, even though being so strong, is a bluff catcher, right? Like,
right.
so it's
Yeah.
important to take a step back and be like, yes, my hand is very strong, but in terms to what my opponent would be betting here, it's not strong.
Yeah. You're right. Yeah. Like it's good to realize because I think even people who don't consider themselves like, oh, a solver person or whatever, will just kind of flick in the call here because it's like, oh, my hand, I have top two pair. What do you want me to do? And it's these are folds that are important to be able to make if you perceive your opponent as not that likely to be bluffing. Um, Now this is an online $500 tournament. I think there is a good chance our opponent is very capable of bluffing. So I'm not. Anyways, I did end up calling. He did river a flush. He had queen nine of diamonds. So makes perfect sense on his end. But yeah, I think it's important to be able to think about laying these down and sometimes lay them down.
Yeah,
The
this one
bluff,
is way harder to lay down.
this one is hard to lay
Or
down. And if
what how's a good way to word this? It just seems way harder to lay down because of the strength of your hand.
right, yeah, like if you're looking at it from the outside, it does. I did take a full time bank here, and yeah, if we look at our list of things, like the story makes sense. It makes sense that he would have been bluffing a flush draw, or that he flopped a set of threes or sevens, or
Hmm.
had two pair that turned into a boat.
Yeah,
Can we
that
beat value? Probably not. Maybe king seven.
yeah.
Um,
So this is good contrast from our first two hands, though, because you're not just our opponent has less bluffs.
I would say our opponent has more value.
Sorry,
Is what I would say.
that's
Yeah,
kind
yeah.
of what I'm trying to get out of that.
Right. Yeah. From like a percentage
Yeah,
basis. Yeah. I
yeah,
think there's still plenty of bluffs, but I think the value makes perfect sense in this
yeah,
situation.
yeah. Whereas
So
in the previous two hands, they didn't make sense, and that's the story didn't make sense. His story, your opponent's story in this hand makes sense, but it's
yes.
so difficult because we have top two pair, and it's still just a bluff catcher. So now it's like, what do we do?
Yeah. It's the sort of situation where if you think someone's under bluffing, you should just fold this. Like
Yeah,
it's not even
yeah.
it wouldn't even be that close. But
Yeah, so paying attention to tendency. So yeah, I think that's a good hand, and also I'm glad you brought this one up because it's one where like we bluff caught incorrectly.
yeah, we're not always right.
No, we're not, and we'll detail those types of hands as well because I mean that's a true part of the game. I'm wrong so frequently, and yeah, yeah, that's just how it is. So
Yeah. I think I gotta bring up the one last one that I remember. It
I,
was in our meetup game, 25,
if
50
you remember
cent.
the details, because I sure as
Yeah.
hell don't.
Someone opens the cutoff, you flat on the button. I'm in the small blind with Jack nine of diamonds. I three bet to like 12 or 13 bigs. Opponent folds, you call. Flop is king, queen, four, I want to say.
Mhm.
The four could be a deuce, but it was king, queen, baby card. I see bet small, you call. Turn is a king, which brings a double flush draw. I bet again, like half pot, just trying to get maybe ace high, maybe under pairs to fold, but then I also realized like this is a meetup game, Max. This might be a bad bluff here by me. You call. River's a queen, so it's king, queen, deuce, king, queen. So here's the thing. All the flush draws and straight draws miss. All of the if you were to have called with like a deuce or an under pair, you're now counterfeited.
Counterfeited, yeah. So all
So a
the
jack
draws
high
miss
beats
and
pocket
all underpairs
eights.
are counterfeited.
Yep. So I realized like, oh, well, now my jack, like, I'm certainly not going to get you to fold ace high here, I bet. And you could certainly have a king or a queen, but like, I'm still good here a decent amount of the time. Or you could just have like 8-7 of hearts or whatever the flush draw was. So I check the river, and you go all in for what is close to pot size, and I just snap call.
You snapped before I even
I
put my chips
literally
in.
I had the call. Oh no, there was. I was just had my mouse hovering over the call button and just bang. And this guy had 8-3 offsuit. He just
I floated you twice with 8 high, planning to bounce. Hey,
yeah.
I'll tell you one thing. I will say one thing in my defense here is that like kudos to me for sticking with my guns on that hand. Like that was my plan and I stuck to it.
Yeah.
To
It
be
was
fair, don't
brilliant.
try this at home. This is something that I did just against Wes in our meetup game because it's funny.
Yeah. And honestly, so if we are talking the strategy here, that did play into the situation. And I also think just based on this board, like Jack high and pocket aces, like if I had pocket aces, it would be kind of a similar strength of hand once you go all in. Like you
Yeah.
either have a king or a queen or you're bluffing.
Because
You
so
know?
8-3 offsuit or 8-3 whatever suit, even if it's suited, has by that river has the exact same value as pocket eights.
Right. Yeah. Um now to be fair,
I thought it was pocket eights.
pocket eights makes a little more sense to call the flop and turn and pre-flop with.
I thought
But
the 3 was an 8. I mean, it's almost an 8.
oh
Misread
man.
my hand, Wes, dude.
Yeah. No, that was the funny one though.
That was a
But I
good.
think some of the concepts apply where it's like even though I only had Jack high, like there are only 2 kings and 2 queens left. There are 2 flush draws that missed. There are you could have called me
Under
with all
pairs
the
that
under
now are
pairs, which
bluffing.
I now beat.
Yeah.
And so I think there is a lot of logic to my call, but also the added equity of just
Just
being able
crushing
to
my
wreck
soul
you.
in
Yeah.
front of all of our friends.
Yeah.
That is awesome, dude. That was a nice hand. Yeah, yeah. I had a thought I was going to say there, but I don't remember. But I look forward to more. Oh yeah, I do remember the thought. Is that there's not often you get those opportunities to bluff catch on those double boards where opponent turns like a lower pair into a bluff, and you can call with like Jack or 10 high. You know what I mean? Like I've done that before, but they're far and few between. They feel good when you get those ones.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
that was a
like
good
them.
one.
If you guys want to come see me bluff with 8-3 offsuit, make sure to come join our home game, our
Come to
meetup
our
game on
next
Clubs Poker
meetup game.
next week, Tuesday, 7:30 p.m. I cannot wait. I'm gonna blast off. It's blasting off time, Wes.
It is. It really is.
I can't wait. But yeah, guys, this is a kind of an insightful episode to review these hands. If you have questions about bluff catching or questions about the hands we went over or thoughts, anything like that at all, send us a message. Hit us up on Discord. You can send us a message there or just post it in one of the Discord channels. Yeah, and we just look forward to battling with you guys next Tuesday in the meetup game. Wes, anything else we have here today?
Nothing more on my end.
Yeah, nothing
Solid
much here.
episode.
Not too much live coming up until the end of the month. I'm looking forward to. I guess it's already the 15th or 14th today. It's the
Yeah,
15th.
it's 15th, 16th
I'll
when it
tell you
comes
what.
out.
Time just does not slow down. It's crazy. I can't believe it's already the 15th. But we have Potawatomi at the end of this month, the MSPT
Mhm.
stop, which I'm looking forward to. I haven't been to Potawatomi since 2017 for their WSOP circuit because they've been shut down for so long.
Yeah.
So
I've
looking
only
forward.
played there once, 2019.
Yeah, I think I've only
Same
been there
thing. I
once
went
or
there for the
twice.
circuit. Yeah.
Looking forward to going out there and winning my second MSPT. I'll let you have second, I guess.
That's
Uh,
so sweet of you.
man, I dream of the day when you and I get heads up in a big tournament.
Yeah.
That would be
Me
super
too.
incredible. But guys, if you haven't yet, make sure to check out our YouTube channel. This video will be on there today. You can find a link for that in all the descriptions anywhere. You can just click on that link. Make sure to subscribe to our channel to help us get, algorithm favoritism so we can get, when you search Suited Kings, it pops up first. Make sure to join our Discord if you haven't yet. Links again for the description in that, links for that in the description rather. Am I missing anything here? I mean, we have a bunch of future stuff coming up. Merch is finally in the works, so look forward to that coming out soon. I've said that for a long time, but it is in the works, and I can't wait to get you guys some goody Suited Kings gear to rock at your, whenever you want to rock it. So make sure to check that out. Other than that, I think that's everything, and yeah, let's keep 2025 rolling here. I'm excited for this year.
Let's do it.
All right, brother. Wesley, have a good rest of your day, sir. I'll see you in the online streets either tonight or later this weekend. And yeah, have a good one.